Welcome to Global Legal Tech Talks, presented in partnership with Net Documents. My name is Frances Anderson. I'm the CEO of Net Law Media, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's session, AI and Law Moving from Momentum to Maturity. As artificial intelligence moves beyond pilot projects into widespread practice, a critical question arises for us all. How can firms embed AI as a trusted, scalable, and sustainable part of their culture and operations? In this discussion, we'll go beyond the initial excitement surrounding AI and explore what's truly required to scale adoption strategically, confidently, and with long-term value in mind, both for the firm and for the users. We're joined by four distinguished guests who will share their insights on these challenges and opportunities. Leading today's conversation is Sasha Cowdrey, our chair for the session today. The webinar is live, and we encourage you to engage with our panel. If you have any questions for Sasha or for any of our speakers, please use the chat or the Q&A function, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to address your questions during the session. Now, let me introduce you all to our chair. Sasha is an experienced presenter and interviewer with a background in finance and television news. You may have seen her anchored on Sky News and produced and reported for global networks, including CNN, Bloomberg, and CNBC. Sorry, Sasha. Sasha regularly hosts events at the intersection of business, finance, and technology. And she began her career in investment banking at UBS and also worked at lastminute.com during the startup phase. So please join me in welcoming Sasha, and thank you all for being here. Sasha, it's over to you.
Frances, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Very excited about this conversation. Welcome to you all. We are going to spend the next 60 minutes moving beyond the early excitement around AI, and we're going to focus on what's needed to scale and sustain AI adoption for the longer term. And some of the topics we want to get into include just practical AI use cases, getting buy-in for AI, the challenges with implementing AI, what's worked, what's not, managing trust, security, and crucially ensuring that there is clarity between strategy and technology, because tech doesn't solve strategy. So I'm delighted to say we have three fabulous speakers here today. They all bring different perspectives to the mix. So whether you're in-house or private practice, I'm sure you will find the next 60 minutes helpful, and I hope a good use of your time. Now, as Frances said, we very much want this to be an interactive discussion. You can submit your questions via Zoom, and we'll come to as many as we have time for. We may not necessarily just wait till the end. If we see something relevant to the conversation, we'll dive right in. So let me just begin by introducing our speakers on the webinar today. Joining us, we have John Krask, Chief Innovation and Knowledge Officer at CMS and Director of LegalTech. I think that's how I say it, John. Correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Sasha.
Sarah Hall, Senior Commercial Lawyer at E.ON, and Michael Owen Hill, Director of Product Marketing at Net Documents. So thank you all for being here today. Maybe could we just do a super quick introduction from all of you before we kick off the discussion? Sarah, maybe I could start with you.
Sorry, just finding the unmute button. Yes, hi everyone, I'm Sarah Hall. I'm a senior commercial lawyer at E.ON, generally looking at tech law and tech procurement contracts. But in addition to that, I also support the legal team with AI and tech procurement.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Michael, over to you.
Oh yeah, Michael Owen Hill. I have been in legal tech for coming up on 20 years, focusing on kind of a variety of parts of legal tech as well as different segments. So small law firms, North America, UK, Europe, and Australia, New Zealand, and kind of the general legal know-how market. With a brand that everyone would probably recognize, so I'm not going to say it, but a much beloved facility for kind of understanding how different matters and cases and processes should work, and then a good stint in strategy on the financial and practice management side for largely the kind of global large and small, large and mid-sized law firms. And now I sit in knowledge repository, where all the knowledge of the individual lawyers, but perhaps more importantly, the entirety of the firm or organization lives.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Michael. John, over to you.
Thanks, Sasha. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So I'm John, and I'm Chief Innovation and Knowledge Officer at CMS. And my role's all about helping our lawyers and our clients work in the smartest way they can. I've always been interested in the junction between the practice of law and the business of law, and nowadays also the sort of future of law. I've got another hat on today as well, as Sasha said. So I am one of the directors of LegalTech, which is Legal IT Innovators Group, and we've been doing some stuff around AI and transparency, and I'm sure we'll get to that as part of the discussion later. Back to you, Sasha.
Thanks, John. Yes, definitely want to probe you on all of that. So thank you all. So Sarah, I'm going to start with you because when we were having a chat prior to this, preparing for this, I really got the impression that Eon, you're very much at the coalface of implementing AI. And from what I understand, Eon is quite forward thinking when it comes to AI. So could you share with everyone what steps you've taken to implement AI, how it's working, and also equally interested to hear what's not worked?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, at Eon, we are very tech forward thinking. It's big in our strategy, both across the business, but also in the legal team. And we are always looking at how tech can enable us in the team to be more efficient and help us in how we do our job. So we use quite a bit of our AI actually. We use Copilot, we use LexisNexis Protégé, and we're also going through an implementation process with Luminance for some of the AI software that they have. So it is, when I think about it, we do actually use quite a lot of tech with AI built in. So yeah, we've got some quick wins there of some easy things that we've rolled out. And then we've also got the implementation with Luminance, which is a longer project. So yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And how easy has it been to implement what you've implemented so far? And what mistakes have you made along the way? I think would be really beneficial for everyone to hear.
Yeah, I think some things are very quick to implement, like the LexisNexis Protégé. It's literally you log onto the platform and it's essentially a chatbot. And if you've got questions, you can ask and then it brings up the answers for you. Other things like Copilot, I wouldn't say it's quite habit yet in our team to be using it, but we're always trying to look at new ways we can use it and benefit from it. And if anyone does think of a new use case, we try and share those across the team in our team scrums. So someone was mentioning that they used it when they were on leave for their holiday period of 2 weeks. They came back and they were asking Copilot to summarize the emails they received and prioritize those for them. So yeah, it's not quite habit Copilot, but I'm hoping it will be over time. And I'm sure there's lots of other use cases that we haven't actually tried it out on, which will come to light in the future. I'm also quite interested in Agentic AI, but I haven't actually delved into that myself yet. So I'm hoping that some of the tech people at Eon can bring the legal team on board once that becomes used more as well.
Mm-hmm. And just briefly, anything that's gone massively wrong that you think would be beneficial for people to learn from?
I wouldn't say anything that's gone massively wrong, but I think you do have to manage your expectations, particularly with the Luminance partnership we now have. I think I did underestimate how much time we would need to put into that, but essentially we're partnering with Luminance for their contract review and drafting platform that they have. And there is quite a bit of upfront work that is required through the implementation onboarding process to get our documents on there. So yeah, I think it's just managing expectations really. Also managing the team as well, because I think they thought, oh, we'll sign the contract and it'll be rolled out really quick. And it hasn't quite happened like that, but we are ensuring that we keep communication open with our team so that they know what we're doing, that we're working on it in the background, and that when we do roll it out, the tool is going to be really beneficial to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for kicking it off. John, I'd like to come to you next. I mean, how, from your perspective, with your CMS hat on, how challenging is it, would you say, to adopt that tech first mindset? And have you been successful in doing that at CMS?
I mean, I think it leads neatly on from the last point that Sarah was making. I think buying tools is almost the easy part, although I don't underestimate the things like the governance and the infosec checking and other stuff you need to do. But that's, that driving adoption is the key part of it, because whatever investments you decide to make, they don't mean anything until people use them in practice.
Yeah.
And mindset is absolutely a key part of that. I think so. I mean, I'm naturally going to say that we're successful about it, but it's definitely a journey. I think it's important that the message isn't just about tech, though, right? So it's also about transforming and incorporating the tech and the other resources into the way that we deliver the work. I regularly say here and to our clients, it feels like the legal industry is now going through its own digital transformation, the same way that the banking industry has done, the same way that the print and media has gone through it, you know, and other industries have gone through. And AI isn't the transformation. AI might be one of the triggers and the drivers in there, but that's not the transformation. The transformation is how we all deliver our work, how we, you know, present services to our clients and stuff. And then bringing it back closer to CMS, I think so our adoption efforts are probably focused on both the sort of central push that you need to do and the resource you need to do that, to communicate about the tools, what can they do, what can't they do, make them as relevant as possible to different people in different teams so that they can understand how they might use them. And then secondly, supporting each of the teams to think about how they can then slot the tools into the way that they work themselves. If I might add one more key thing here, something I don't know if anybody's listening that's heard me say this before, but I quite often say that this is about a sort of human plus machine. I know we're going to come back to skills later, Sasha, but that need to think about how us as humans are going to use and interact with and add value on top of those tools. So that's the sort of mindset piece that I think is important. We need to help people get to that place. And so I think we've made a good start, but there's plenty more to do, is the short answer, Sasha.
Thank you. Michael, let me bring you in. I mean, what would you say from your experience some of the main challenges are that law firms face when it comes to AI?
If I had to boil it down to one kind of relatively consistent, maybe root cause, I think there's a little bit of challenge in the sequencing around what is your business strategy? How does your business strategy inform your technology strategy, your operational strategy, your people strategy, and then ensuring that what you're doing around AI fits into that. I think that is shown often in what we've heard over the past, several months to a year is great. We've rolled out, we're through our test phase, we're somewhere in a test phase, and now we're really getting a lot of pressure around ROI. It's like, okay, well, what did you design the implementation for? Did you design the implementation for a straight line time savings? And if so, did you align it to use cases where that's the right use case that you want to save the time? Did you design it to take your loss leader practice and make it more efficient and therefore actually make it profitable as a way of adjusting your overall book of business? Did you want to use it to interact directly with clients so that your engagements with them are more sticky? Did you want to use it so that you can attract and retain top talent and get them trained up and productive very quickly? And you have a really rich strategy around how you're going to enable them with tech while not sort of blinding them to the experiences that will help them be a lawyer. Strategy is very complicated, and it's not something that you can necessarily go to a tech provider or even look out into the market and get the answer. It's work on the part of the organization and its leadership to chart that course forward. And I would say that is incredibly important work in a time of disruption, which is what we're in now. So I think that is the key thing that then shows up in a lot of different ways. It shows up in, oh, well, we spent X amount of time trying to roll out this tool, and now we decided we don't like it. It's like, well, is it for what you tasked it with? It's like, oh, it doesn't have any access. It has no legal context, for example, and so it's failing to do legal specific work. It's like, yeah, it wasn't designed for that. Doesn't mean it's a bad tool. It's just horses for courses.
Yeah.
I think we get a very spun around in the tech first, meaning figure out the technology first and then what the impact is going to be. And I would say that's probably not the wisest approach. Good news is, wherever anyone is in their journey, you can go back and have those conversations.
I don't know if that's good news, but
you can go back and have that conversation around strategy and adjust course. And I would say if you're on a solid strategy for a couple of years, it's time to go back and look at it again because the world is moving very quickly.
Yeah, actually, it's such a good point you make. And Sarah and John, I'd love to come back to both of you and ask you, what was your starting point when you began this journey? How did you figure out where you were going to implement AI and then go about that? either of you, whoever wants to
Yeah,
jump in.
I'm happy to kick this off. So what we did in our legal team is we went around the senior lawyers and we looked at pain points about how we can make life easier for the lawyers in the team. And one thing that came up is that we spend a lot of time doing drafting and reviewing. So we went out and looked in the market at tools that could help us with those specific issues that we were having. And then when we were looking at what tools we could use, we also went out to the team with a survey about what documents they spend their time on drafting and reviewing. So then that could help us determine what documents we would then put through the tool to start with, so that we could focus on the ones that people are spending a lot of time on, which we could then prioritize those. So yeah, we did go out to the team to find out what their pain points were, and then found the tech that would fit those issues.
Thank you. John, how did you go about it?
I think so. I mean, I agree with Michael and Sarah's approach. So we're very similar, but we started with the firm strategy, thinking about what we actually did quite a lot of work a couple of years ago about the impact of AI, both and sort of modeling that and doing some work type specific workshops to look at what we did and then dig into the what actually went on in those workshops. So we understood how much time our lawyers spend on drafting and negotiating versus researching and other things. And then we thought, well, what is AI actually good at? So Michael, I think you're right, but there's also a sort of parallel bit about understanding the art of the possible and what the tools can do, because then you need to then sort of do this matching between what the tools can do and what the strategy is and where the pain points are, as Sarah says. The only other thing to add is we then have got what I might call a portfolio approach. So I'm not trying to pick one tool that does everything. I'm trying to think about what are the big use cases, and I'm not talking at the specific transaction or case level. I'm talking about sort of activities that our lawyers might do, and then I don't want to see more than a couple of tools in each of those boxes, because then you start doing overlap, because there's some obviously investment that needs to go into that thing. I'm not saying that's off, that needs to stay forever, but that's been our approach, is to start with the understanding, think about the sort of what the portfolio might look like, and rather like if you're investing in your pension, and then make sure we've got the right tools in the right boxes.
That's such a great point. Just to
Go
tag
ahead.
in, the converse is we don't want to do anything until we have the future fully figured out, right? And of course, that's not going to work. So it's about, I think ultimately it's about flexibility. I would say early on, those who had a very strategic and business-centric approach have reaped enormous benefits in terms of what they've been able to accomplish, both at the kind of how they work and sort of, I would say, less tangible or softer metrics, but in terms of opening up new revenue streams for their firm, very measurable impact to revenue recovery per partner profits. I mean, the like really top line stuff. I think that as time goes on, there's just pressure to do strategy and exploration and education kind of all at once. But making sure that we're not dropping any of those balls, I think, is important.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, who is spearheading the decisions with regards to what I mean, Sarah, you mentioned, you go and you find out, okay, it's drafting, that's time consuming. What can we do about that? But do any of you at your firms have, say, a head of AI, or who is going into that space and making those decisions and driving those decisions?
Yeah, from an E.ON perspective, we do have, so E.ON UK is part of a wider group in Germany. So we have various people in our digital technology business who are heading up AI. But from a legal tech perspective, it was very much, what do we want to do in legal in the UK? And also in group, we have their own whole legal team with some legal ops people as well. But we were very much like, we want to just go ahead. We want to look at what AI is out there that can help us. We kind of were quite forward thinking and kind of didn't do our own thing. But I think if we'd have waited for group as well, it would have taken us longer. So we just wanted to go ahead and drive that. So we did have quite a bit of leeway to just be able to go ahead and procure some of the AI ourselves, separate to group.
Maybe if I jump in, I think at CMS I own the AI strategy, but that doesn't mean I own every single aspect of it. So, and when I say AI strategy, I'm not sure we should be calling it that, because AI isn't our strategy, but everybody expected us to have one. But anyway, so let's get over the name of it for a minute. But that doesn't mean I own every aspect of it. So, for example, there's risk aspects of it, there's education aspects of it, there's governance aspects of it. But I'm help bring that together, and often, and help make sure we're driving that sort of across the matrix of people and teams that need to be involved. We've got an AI committee that supports on the governance and decision making and driving. I'm lucky that I've got a brilliant team of partners from across the practice who are engaged in that, as well as the colleagues in IT and risk on there as well. So that's the place where we make decisions, if you like, about what we're going to do, and about and also about feeding up into our board and those sorts of decisions. Just as Michael said about exploration, I'm lucky that, I guess, I've got resource in my team to be able to do that sort of thing as well. So I've got a data scientist and a developer in a bit of my team who can just play with stuff, and take ideas that we might have in our lawyers and experiment with things. That's not a full-blown product development shop. It's literally prototypes and experiments and stuff. So it depends on exactly what it is, but it comes together in terms of our strategy and approach.
Yeah, and you need that flexibility, because it's very hard to just decide and then go for something and know that it's going to be right, I'm sure. John, you mentioned the importance of managing expectations, I think, because, you'll say, great, or maybe it was you, Sarah, but, you're going to implement AI and then people expect miracles straight away. How do you measure the success of AI, and do you feel that there's this pressure to show, right, we've invested in X and now it's delivering Y? How do you handle that?
I think it was Sarah, so I'll let her go first.
Okay, sorry, Sarah.
There is pressure. I mean, because I am a lawyer, that's my day-to-day job, but I'm also product owner for the AI that we've procured. And I'm really conscious every month that goes on that there is pressure, particularly from our head of legal, because she wants to see that we're actually getting from the tool what we expected to. And I think because we didn't quite expect to have there be to be so much work involved in the implementation process, I think we were hoping by now, or at least in the next couple of months, we would be able to measure that success. But we're certainly starting to think about how we're going to do that. And I think, again, I mentioned that when we were looking at what tools we were going to procure, we went out and we looked at what the pain points are, and we did a survey, and we basically got information from our legal team about how much time they're spending on what. So the intention is we will do a similar survey when we come and actually test the success and find out how much it is being used and how much time it is saving people. So yes, it is on my mind that we are going to have to get to that point. And we have also asked our suppliers, like, can you give us some ideas about how we can basically show the output and basically show that return on investment. So, but yeah, it is something that we think about. I mean, in our legal team, we don't procure that much. I mean, we procure external legal services, but from a tech perspective, in comparison with some other areas of Eon, we don't really. So it's not within our day-to-day job of having to do this, and it's really trying to understand like how we can show that ROI.
And I mean, I suppose it's complicated by the fact that we've had so much stuff in the press out there by big tech firms who've invested heavily in AI and who are yet to see any return. So that's also something that firms are grappling with. Michael, how do you see it?
I think it's important to bifurcate the sort of largely Silicon Valley kind of conversation, and where that is and where it's going with what I think I've seen mostly in legal and in adjacent kind of professional services industries is how do we actually apply this to real work in a way that's responsible, keeping in mind that the objective is almost always to find better ways to deliver impeccable work product and superior client value if you're on the law firm side, and superior value to the organization or enterprise if you're on the corporate legal department side, or against your mission if you're in government. So I think there's an inherent element of pragmatism that in some ways insulates legal from that kind of I mean, we all read the news, whatever crazy nonsense is going on. It has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about here. Thank goodness, I would say. I would even say that when it comes to inflated values and maybe red flag style investment practices, as long as we're not all investing personally in stock will always go up mentality around AI, and we're focused on like the practical applications within a very known world, I think we'll largely be insulated from that. And I think if I translate that into like specific examples, I mean, I think the examples that we heard from John and Sarah are great, but just the like, how do we do kind of two classes of things? Either the thing that takes a very long time and people maybe aren't very good at, like, oh, we renegotiated 4 terms in this agreement. Can you please very, very quickly go through and impeccably make that adjustment? And it's not strategic, highly intellectual work. It doesn't help you be a good lawyer. You're there as a head count to get that work done. And can only be the only thing that can happen is it can go wrong, right? I mean, no one gets any kudos if it's right. The expectation is that it's impeccable. And then there's the kind of more strategic stuff, like how do you measure the benefit of being able to do that in 10 minutes as opposed to 10 hours? That you can articulate that against a number of different business goals, but it's relatively easy to measure. But how do you articulate the value of having accurate, complete, and consistent metadata applied within a known taxonomy across an entire repository of documents that could be numbering in the tens or hundreds of millions? Because that speaks to security, to organization, to the ability to consistently apply data loss prevention policies and retention policies, the ability to find things that historically have not been found. And I'm speaking from the TMS world because it's what I know best. But those kind of things that may not ever even touch a user, because their systematic capabilities can often, I would say, lose a bit of focus, but can be incredibly transformative in terms of the impact to the overall business.
Thank you. John, as someone who's spearheading the AI at your firm, then, how do you deal with that ROI question? How do you set the expectation bar?
The short answer is we try really hard when we're doing something new to think about what we want and then how we might measure it, right? And so what we want isn't, as an outcome, isn't necessarily prompts or whatever it is. It's those things that Michael talked about. But then you have to boil that down to, okay, well, how do I measure that? And that might be all these things that people listening today will be thinking about, like you might be survey feedback, it might be number of prompts that is an indicator of that, but it might also be the quality of prompts if you want to look at things, and then coming up with a method to look at that. It might be getting people together in a room and doing something more quantitative as well. So yeah, we try really hard to think about it before we get started, because what's really hard, of course, is if you get started and then you start thinking about it, it's really hard to go back and plan it. It might sound like an obvious point. The other thing that, I mean, we're a big Harvey shop here, and I mean, I'm very comfortable with what's going on in terms of ROI, and so I'm not. I know there's been lots of chat about it, but I'm not remotely worried about that at the moment. And some of it is you can just smell it when it's working, and you get the sort of feedback from people. I'm not saying it's perfect, and people don't come up with examples of hallucinations and all of this other stuff, of course, but generally you can, as well as the measures you might put in, then you can also smell it. The last point on this is, for me anyway, is I just encourage people to think about what they really want, because maybe the end goal is to, I don't know, drive productivity or maintain profitability or to meet your whatever strategic goals you might have. But given the early state of some of the cycles that we're in, actually what you want might be driving engagement initially, and then those other things might come. Because if, back to your question about mindset a bit earlier, if the thing we really want to do is change mindset and get adoption, then engagement might be more important than immediately saving what X or Y. So And so and if you start thinking about that, then that's an interesting thing, because that might change your approach, if that makes sense.
No, that's a really fair point. I mean, I suppose, Sarah, you have the luxury of being in a quite tech, in a firm that thinks tech first. So you haven't had the struggles with mindset shift. But I think it comes up over and over in conversations that I'm having when I speak to companies, that is actually a real barrier. Any tips for surmounting that kind of barrier from anyone?
I think from my perspective, in our team we are forward thinking, and even before AI, we've been using lots of different tech. Like we have like a SharePoint for requests for support that come through, and we use Planner. So we are quite forward thinking, but I'm very conscious with the tech that we are rolling out at the moment. I don't want to launch it too soon, because I want it to be in a good place that when people start using it, they are happy to use it and they trust the output. And there's a lot of pressure to roll it out as soon as we can, but it's having to balance to make sure that what we roll out has been properly tested and we are comfortable with the lawyers using it. Because at some point, we're also hoping that people outside of our legal team can also use the tech, so potentially supply chain and some of the business areas. So it's got so much potential there, and we really need to make sure that we don't just roll it out too quickly, and then people come back with loads of queries or concerns with the output, and then it's like, then they lose trust, and then it's so much then harder to get them on board later on. So that's something definitely that we've had to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I should just reiterate that we are very open to taking any questions during this webinar. So anyone who wants to ask a question, no matter how big or how small, or if you think it's a really obvious one, please don't be shy. Please send them through and we'd be very happy to answer them. John, I'd like to come to you now with your LegalTech hat on, asking you, so Legal IT Innovators Group, I'd like you to tell us all more about it and why it's important when you're trying to build a trustworthy AI practice.
Thank you. Yes, and grateful for the opportunity to talk about this as well. So the idea of the LegalTech AI benchmarking initiative, as it started off about a year ago, when I and others were quite frustrated about the sorts of claims around accuracy, mostly marketing claims, and other studies were circulating. People might remember a study from by Stanford, which has looked at the claims which various of the providers made, and I thought there must be, enough of this stuff going on. There must be a simple way of articulating accuracy in a transparent way. And what I had in my mind was, when we're looking at buying a car, there's a miles per gallon thing, like measure there, and there's a different measure for urban driving and then a normal and longer distance driving and stuff. And I'm going to take it in a moment. I'm going to talk about what we've done and but it turns out actually creating that sort of number is not simple. So we pivoted quite quickly to focus more on agreeing a sort of baseline to make sure that everyone across the industry has a common understanding of the language we all use in this space and a core set of behaviors around transparency. So in just last month, we actually launched the LegalTech AI Transparency Charter and supporting transparency statement template. The charter is a sort of set of behaviors for anybody who might be offering a legal AI product. So whether you're a supplier or a law firm, and it sets out essentially, as I said, those basic behaviors that we'd expect around claims, around testing, etc. And then the supporting transparency statement, it started out as a mirror of what Google did with I don't know if people know, they created this thing called a model card, which is essentially an information sheet. Think about an expanded sort of top trumps card about the models themselves, and it was intended as an open source way for model providers to publish information in that consistent format. So we've adapted that thought, and then the idea is for the legal industry, for providers to be using that as a template for how they provide information to potential customers and others in the legal market about what they've done, what they do, what their tool is good at, what it's not good at, what testing they've done on what data set, and that sort of surrounding world. And our idea is that all of this, if we all across the in-house teams, law firms, and providers of legal tech solutions, if we all want to drive sustainable adoption, then that has to start with transparency and trust. And so that's the background for why we've done it. And then we can all start understanding what tools are good at, not good at, and what they can and can't do, and set expectations properly. So yeah, there's it's been a year's worth of work to get quite a broad community and a really to sign off on this, but now it's been published and we're on a bit of a mission to get providers to be signing up to it now.
Yeah, that's great. And have you benefited from it yet at all, or you really just managed to set it up after a year?
I think we're starting to see some shoots. I mean, certainly there's been what was really good is we managed to bring together quite a big community across the legal industry. There was something like 300 organizations that joined the initiative, and then on the core working group we've got big legal tech providers as well. So we've got iManage and Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis and then a bunch of law firms. And so it was a cross-industry collaborative effort. Have we got to the, we've just published it, so I can't tell you that we've got everybody signed up, but but hopefully it's a good starting place for anybody who's in the market for understanding what, and so I think people, if you're procuring legal AI things, use it. It's a template there for you to use. It's all open source. You can just go onto the Lytic site and use it with the conversations you are having with whichever provider it is.
And actually, someone has put in a question, can a link to the publication and templates that John has mentioned be shared?
Yes, I actually tried to do it on the chat, but I can only chat with these guys here, not all of you. But if I put it in the chat with then maybe maybe Francis or can share it. I'll do that now.
Okay. And we've actually got lots of questions coming in, so I'm just going to start with the question from Serene, which is, I think you can all see it now. The use of AI in the legal field raises important questions about privacy, confidentiality, and trustworthiness. So I'll just do it briefly. So maintaining strict data protection standards is essential. What do you all think about it? Yeah, and security and data protection was on my list of things to talk about. Who would like to jump in?
I can jump in. So I think 100% right. And also the sort of talking point in the general marketplace is, oh, we won't use your confidential client or internal data to train the model. It's like, okay, well, that's not enough. So are there exemptions in place to ensure that there is no algorithmic or human oversight of the inputs or outputs to the large language model? Because if there isn't an exemption, that means that on the basis of the words that you use in a prompt or an output, it could fire an algorithm that could fire an employee at Google or Meta, hopefully not, but or Microsoft, to actually look at that flow of information, which could include sensitive information. So like being really either yourself being extremely savvy or working with folks in your organization or even outside your organization in an advisory role that can help really make sure not only that the kind of baseline requirements are met around the use of AI, but also that any piece of information is fully governed, by which I mean, if it flows to a different system, does it suddenly become accessible to people who can't see it? Because ethical walls are a thing. How do you make sure that you have effectively a chain of custody over all that information? It is relatively easy to put a UI skin on top of something like ChatGPT and say, hey, use this to put your documents in. And is that potentially more secure than just using, commercially free ChatGPT on an open Wi-Fi? Sure. Does it meet the extremely strict standards that should be in place to ensure absolute certainty with regard to confidentiality of sensitive client information? Maybe, but I would say probe very deeply with any provider on that front. Really understand how security, access controls, data loss prevention policies, even document retention policies, like how does all of that roll into the usage of AI? Because it should all be consistent, whether it's a person or an AI tool.
Thank you. Sarah, John, any thoughts on data protection? Any additional protections you've put in?
Well, when we have been procuring our legal tech, we've had to go through all the different stages. So sign off by data protection, information security. We're part of E.ON Group in Germany. and the EU AI Act is applicable, and we've also signed up to that within the UK as well. So we had to go through a very lengthy procurement process of getting sign-off across the board. And we also have guidance for the lawyers about what data and what contracts they should be putting through the tool. So yes, it's very important, and we went through every step, and it took us a while, but we got there. Tech we've procured.
And I think I was just want to pick up on the last point that Sarah made. There's all the organizational stuff, which is exactly as Michael described, critical when you're onboarding a new tool, and the contract, and either for some categories of things, different risk assessment stuff as well, so you can keep it in your and align it with your risk protocols and risk registers and stuff. But the user plays a part here as well. So there's of course the obligations in the EU AI Act around AI literacy, which are already in force, and I think are a wise sort of baseline driving license that everybody needs to have anyway, but around this stuff. And then making sure you've got the right policies and guidelines about what to put in where. And for us and for law firms, we also get lots of questions from clients around this stuff. So I need to make sure that we've got the answers ready. All those questions that Michael asked about, so I can answer questions from clients that come along. So yes, one thing maybe that if people maybe haven't thought about that we're starting to see is existing suppliers, not AI native tools, maybe like adding AI. So now with added AI, right, we're starting to see that a lot in everything that we've got, all of the tools we've got. So it's sneaking in, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to then go back and think about those questions around diligence and the contracts around those, because often that can take you by surprise. So it's probably worth an ongoing look at your suppliers and how you make sure you know what they're doing, because in case they're introducing things that where you maybe haven't done the same diligence as you would with a new supplier.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sarah, there are a couple of questions here for you. Let me go with the first one. The first one's from Peter. Sarah, what's the best AI tool you have encountered? Oh, sorry, it's just moved. I think it was for drafting contracts.
Oh, well, that's not a very tricky question, because we have procured luminance, and we did go out, we did a very lengthy process where we looked in the market. We also had a consultant who helped us narrow down the market. But yeah, feel free to contact me if anyone wants any tips of what to put in your RFI when you go out to market if you're looking at these kind of tools, because there's a lot of questions that you could be asking. And I think make sure when you're going through your process, if you are looking to procure, that if you can, you get some form of trial or testing. And it can be really difficult because some of them require like Word plugins, and then it's sometimes difficult internally to get that access approved. But try and do what you can to like test them out before you do actually procure. But yeah, I didn't go to everyone in the market, but we did go out to a few suppliers. So.
And Sarah, just another one personally for you as well. You mentioned earlier about the sharing of use cases in the team to support the adoption of AI. Are there any other suggestions about practical ways to encourage the adoption of new tools in teams or on a wider basis?
I think, yeah, we use our team scrums. So we have like weekly team meetings where we're very good at sharing information across the team on a number of things. And that is like the perfect opportunity to, if you've got a good, easy win, to just raise it on the call and share it. And then people are like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I'm definitely going to try doing that. But also with some of the tech, we are making sure we're doing demos, we're doing town halls, we're trying to get the suppliers in to show the team what it does. Because I think the more access people have to it, and sometimes they do need hand holding, you can bring them along with you. But the key thing for me is not to rush it, because we want to make sure that the tools are absolutely working before you roll them out. And some of them will be really easy and you don't need to do much upfront work, but others do need more work. So yeah, it's a careful balance there.
Yeah, thank you.
I think there's a lot of power in stories, back to what Sarah was saying. So, and I don't just mean telling those stories from the center, but what we try and do is encourage each of the teams to tell stories about how they've used tools. The other really practical thing that we're asking people to do is just pause at the start of a new piece of work and resist the temptation to just do it like you did it last time, and think, is there something that we can use one of these tools for? So I'm not saying pause for 3 weeks or anything. I mean 10 minutes, and just go, right, is there something that we can use here that would help?
That's a really good tip.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah, and it does take time, because we've just rolled out a tool and I forgot to use it. I just went straight into it, did the job. I thought that would have been a perfect job to have done through the tool. But I do think with time it will become habit using these tools, where sometimes
plus,
it's easy to get into it and not think.
Yeah, and plus currently, Sarah, that's you who's probably got the most, you're the one who's thinking most about AI first, where can I use it? But people who aren't even thinking about that need to be really encouraged to do that.
Yes.
A question here from Christelle. Can someone talk about how they are approaching shadow AI?
Sure, I'll pick that one up first, if you like. I think we try and encourage everybody to come forward, and we've got guidelines and an AI policy which applies whatever people are using, right? And so we haven't blocked the consumer AI tools, but we have also provided enterprise grade ones, and we're quite clear with people what they should use and when they should use it. And if people come across something new, we've got people in the team who can then pick that up and then help review and then decide whether or not we onboard it. So I don't think the way through this is to just bring down and every organization is different, right? But just bring down the shutters and say, no, we're not allowing anything, because people will find ways around that at home or on their mobiles or other things. So you kind of need to encourage experimentation and then bring people in and then try and be as responsive as you can be, although that's hard, right, as an organization, but be as responsive as you can be to the new ideas and things that are coming along.
Michael, did you want to add anything?
No, completely agree. It's a bit of a balance act. So official enterprise grade tools are going to have guardrails, right, to ensure appropriate and de-risked use. And that's the part of the benefit of those tools. But each of those guardrails is also could be viewed as a barrier by a user who maybe uses something like a ChatGPT or a Claude in their own personal life. And it's like, well, why can't I just use this? And I think the answer is because you owe a duty to your firm and your client to not expose their private, sensitive information in a public exchange on literally an open Wi-Fi. But to John's point, folks 100% will. I mean, anecdotal but true story. Sneaking out of the firm across the street to the open Wi-Fi in a neighborhood cigar shop to use ChatGPT because the approved tool was too hard. And I think that is not a technology problem. Now, is there a strategy question around, like, have we maybe erred too far on the side of guardrails such that the experience is so inferior that people have a hard time using it? Or is it just expediency at the expense of the client and the firm? And that's not a tech problem, that's a people problem and or a culture problem, which does mean it has to be solved, but it should be solved through people, process, culture, and then reinforced through technology. But it is all you have to do is look at the stats of how many lawyers are self-report using generative AI tools versus how many firms and departments have actually implemented official ones to know that there's a lot of shadow AI going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you mentioned guardrails, and I'm going to come back because we still have more questions coming through. But Sarah, on the call before when we were prepping for this, you said something very interesting about guardrails at Eon, and that go ahead. It would be great to hear what you would say.
Yeah, we don't have an AI policy, but we have some guardrails, which is like a one-pager PowerPoint slide of like do's and don'ts when it comes to AI. And I looked at those when I was going through the process of procuring our AI. And I was like, these are really restrictive. And a lot of what we are looking to do would not comply with the guardrails. And I think it was the fact that they'd been written a while ago and they hadn't really been quite specific. So absolutely, if you don't go through the proper procurement process in Eon, you shouldn't be using the AI. But what we have procured, then it should be clearer that the guardrails do not apply in all those circumstances where we've procured something internally, it's gone through the right checks, it's been signed off, it's been approved. Because if you just read them without thinking that, you'd be like, oh, I can't really be doing anything with this AI, and everything that we've procured we're too restricted to actually use it. So I would recommend that if you do have some AI guardrails, if they've not been reviewed for a while, that you do look back, because things have changed in even like the past year. So yeah, it's certainly something we are looking at updating ours now, because they're just really restrictive if you're not aware that you can procure AI, and we do have AI procured within Eon, like Copilot, which everyone has access to if you've applied for the license internally. So, and lots of what is written in those guardrails is too restrictive, even when it comes to Copilot. So.
Here's an interesting question. If AI drastically shortens time spent on a matter, how do firms justify hourly billing? Do you think the billable hour will be phased out? I think this is for you, John.
Yeah, thanks. I was smiling because, of course, I mean, this is a question that is discussed a lot. I think inevitably clients will expect law firms to be using AI and for to at least share in the benefits and efficiency savings. I'm not sure it's as simple as saying that the billable hour is completely gone, but I would be very surprised if there wasn't a much stronger move towards fixed and value-based billing. Be interested in Sarah's view on this, of course, because in Eon they'll be customers of legal services and legal spend. But one more thought just before, which is there's a whole ecosystem here as well, which we haven't had to think about this before. We're going to, I think, if we get time, we were going to, talk about. I know one of your questions, Sasha, was about what does all of this do to the number of juniors that are coming in at the beginning of a profession, in the profession, and because naturally it's the sort of those sorts of tasks are maybe where AI is starting. I mean, actually, we're seeing great benefit with partners using AI as well. But that aside. But of course, nobody is saying we don't need experienced lawyers in the future to help with the negotiation and advice and management and all this stuff. And those experienced people only come from having been juniors in the beginning. And so it's not as simple as just removing them all and then therefore removing all of the cost of all of those juniors and of course the cost of the tools. So is there a conversation that that every client should be having with their law firm about this? And how they're using AI and how that's going to work? Absolutely, yes. Is it as simple as the billable hour is dead? No, but I would expect a much higher proportion of, as I say, value and fixed price billing stuff. But Sarah might completely disagree with me.
Yeah, well, at Eon, we have some quite interesting pricing menus when it comes to our external law firm. So we don't really do much billable hour stuff where we're procuring legal support from our external law firms. It tends to be we've got pricing menus. So yeah, it is tricky. I mean, when we went out and we were looking at our panel firms a couple of years ago, we did have some questions in our RFI regarding, are you using AI? But it was more about to try and get some information from our law firms as to what they're actually doing and try and get some advice on what suppliers are out there and what they're using themselves. And we also have an AI and tech collaboration group across our panel firms so we can get some information and inside knowledge about the tech that they're using, and also if they've got other clients who are looking at AI procurement, if we can try and have conversations with them. So there is definitely a conversation with us and our panel firms about tech and AI.
Actually, I'm glad you brought up the graduate question, John, because I did want to sneak that in, even though we've only got about 5 minutes left. But what kind of impact do you think it will have on graduate recruitment? We are hearing already that there are possibly fewer graduate recruitment jobs and then therefore less juniors coming through the ranks. Is that positive or negative? What does it mean for skill sets? I mean, obviously doing a lot of boring, repetitive work is not a skill that, that's great if that can be outsourced to AI. Does it have any other implications?
I mean, I won't repeat what I just said. I think, senior lawyers in the future means we need junior lawyers now. I think the shape of firms and businesses might change, but I don't just mean the number of people in it. I also mean the types of roles that are in there and the types of skills that are in there. So I think there's also loads of opportunity for different sorts of roles. So delivery teams might look quite different in the future. So technologists and project managers and lawyers working much more closely together. I think there's a lot of, actually, if we if I just think about our own sort of AI strategy, that I think that the biggest impacts aren't really to do with the tech. They're to do with sort of business and strategy decisions, and then people related things. So which are all, I don't think is as simple as just those digital skills and tech skills that people need, but also we need to think quite carefully about the sort of human and business skills. So what are we adding on top of the technology, as well as being able to use it, and the legal skills and the sort of gaps that might emerge. So that the outsourcing that routine stuff to AI is going to have an impact on that. I was a real estate lawyer a long time ago. I learned a lot of what I did from reading a lot of leases. We won't need juniors to do that in the future, because AI will read and report on, and do that sort of thing on leases. But that doesn't mean that our lawyers, as they grow and develop, don't need to understand leases and don't need to understand how to negotiate them and what's market practice for certain provisions and stuff. They absolutely need to know those things. So we need to all be thinking about all the way across the industry, how we're going to help embed those skills, because the old ways of doing it, I'm not saying that you need to go back and just force people to read lots of them, but that doesn't mean we don't need the skills. So figuring out the best way of getting those skills into people is going to be a real impact, I think, Sasha. I think it's a fascinating sort of thought.
It is, it really is. Right, we've got 2 minutes left. I'm going to try and answer 2 questions very quickly. One which came in very early, which I didn't have a chance to get to. Sarah, for you, what would you say has been the biggest barrier to the implementation of AI in your business?
Well, I mean, my day job is a tech lawyer, so I tend to provide legal support, but obviously being product owner now for some of the tech procurement, I've gone through the process that my stakeholders would have to do. And it was quite a lengthy process to get sign off for our tool, particularly because we're a group company. So I think it probably was just the whole process. I mean, data protection I deal with a lot. InfoSec a little bit as well, but going through the process of having to tick every part of what I needed to do to get through the procurement, that probably in total was the biggest barrier.
Okay, brilliant. And final question for a succinct response, which is also a great one. I'm sorry I haven't been able to get to all the questions. A question from Kevin: given our increasing reliance on AI, how do we prepare for business continuity in the face of global cloud services, i.e. recent AWS outage? Good question. Anyone want to jump to that?
I would say that it is that there should be an organization-specific plan that is probably more focused on the sort of predictable, unpredictable versus the sort of ultimate black swan of coronal mass ejection, and all the electricity in the world goes out for 3 months. I mean, you can't really strategize around that as if you're a service provider, but you should have redundancies and plans in place. But what those plans are depends upon your organization, your tech stack, the pieces that are would be implicated. I know we take a kind of multi-cloud and agnostic approach ourselves, which is a long-term strategy, but also I think good to know that we have flexibility as new models come in or as new infrastructure becomes available. We can leverage that strategically. That doesn't provide an immediate answer for Microsoft 365 is down sporadically around the world. I think John probably has a much better take on this, or a much more organizational specific take on this than I do, though.
John, in a couple of sentences.
I think you need to go through the tools and the things that you use, and decide which of them, how business critical they are to service delivery, and then start with the things that are most in the flow of the work and critical to delivery, and make sure you've got at least a plan for how you would cope without that thing. That might be a manual plan, right? Because it might be that there isn't an alternative, but you at least need to think about what those things are. So, for example, I know it's not AI, but electronic signatures, that's now just de rigueur, right? And so is it okay that we only all have one of those, or reliance on one large language model underneath all of the tools that you use? Maybe everything's built on one, and maybe that's not okay as well. So back to Michael's point. So, but it has to start with the tools you use in your business, and then figuring out which things are most important, and therefore which things you want to do something about, and go from there.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. We are out of time. I just want to thank all of you for joining the session. Michael, Sarah, John, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to everyone who logged onto the webinar for joining this session with Legal Tech Talks produced by NetLaw Media. It's been such a fascinating discussion. It could have gone on for so much longer. It's been a real pleasure hosting this panel with Net Documents. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe today, and hopefully we will see you at future conversations.